How do you see the microbiome field emerging over the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, I think microbiome is going to evolve in a massive way. Thank you. It's not the same as singing into my hairbrush at home. Yeah, in the next 10 years, I think that the microbiome field is going to evolve tremendously in the way that we handle medicine, both from a therapeutic and diagnostic perspective. There are companies poised right now in the process of commercializing microbiome discoveries, and in some indications that are very sort of straightforward and don't have good treatments for right now. For example, chronic Clostridium difficile infection. One of the most effective treatments right now is a fecal microbiome transplant. Very efficacious, not so nice. So really trying to get at the most active components of a fecal microbiome transplant and put that into a live biotherapeutic that would make a rapid, easy to take, easy to administer treatment that wouldn't require the whole process of an FMT. Beyond that, I really expect that in the next 10 years, some of these key diagnostic findings, or at least preliminary diagnostic findings, are going to be translated into tests that we can order in hospitals, in clinics. For example, there's been some really groundbreaking research to suggest that at the time of diagnosis, treatment-naive cancer patients can be stratified into those who are likely to respond to a chemotherapeutic agent and those who are not. Imagine being able to take a test before you start treatment and figure out whether you're a good candidate for the treatment your doctor wants to provide to you. For example, using immuno-oncology agents like anti-PD-1 therapy that have a fairly low response rate, something like 30%. If you can figure out if you're a good candidate for that drug right off the bat or not, that has the potential to speed up your timeline to treatment and hopefully ultimately therapy. So I think in the next 10 years, what we're going to be seeing is a number of live biotherapeutic products coming to market. A number of those are already in phase 2, approaching phase 3 clinical trials. I think we're also going to see a number of these findings translated into diagnostics that can be utilized in labs and clinics and enhance our treatment options.
So I'm going to give you somewhat of a different perspective. First, I'm going to say the science is really early, and a lot of what we hear in the consumer lay press may or may not be accurate. So it's kind of buyer beware at this point in time. Would you agree? I do like, Emily pointed out some of the big wins we see in the microbiome space, cancer immunotherapy and the chance to personalize those, the efficacious fecal transplants for C. difficile. There's also, most people think of the microbiome as simply bacteria, but there's more to it. There's archaea, fungi, all sorts of things in there. So it's not just about bacteria, but there's also new applications coming in infectious disease, which will kind of counter our bacterial resistance that we're developing. From a business perspective, here's a few numbers. The current value of human microbiome-based products and interventions for diagnostics and therapeutic use is today estimated at $275 million to $400 million worldwide. But it's actually expected to increase to $750 million to $1.9 billion by the year 2024. So a lot of people are seeing financial gain and or profitable, lucrative opportunities as we learn more about the oral microbiome. One of the other challenges, though, that I see in the next 10 years is as you even look at the composition of this panel and the different perspectives and disciplines that we bring, I think we might agree that to do microbiome research requires large, complex, multidisciplinary teams. Would you agree with that? And this level of collaboration between consumers and lay people and sophisticated scientists will become even more important as we discover more around the microbiome. So, I come from the generation where these kind of multidisciplinary collaborations globally were not that effective, and I'm hoping as we learn more about the microbiome that this level of collaboration starting here and in other places will become more easier to do. Looking at the oral microbiome, there can be discussion about whether it's more important to take care of your gut or your mouth. Or we could say it's all one big tube, and where does it actually start? So I just want to begin to tickle your imagination that there's more to your health than just brushing your teeth. There's a whole oral microbiome that sits in there that's different from your saliva and contributes to decay and periodontal disease. And gum disease is known to be a trigger for systemic autoimmune disease. And there you're starting to see all of my unusual connections.
Just to add to that, thinking about the direct-to-consumer market here, and there are these fearless companies out there today, I think what is going to be needed is to, again, from a population point of view, collect this data at a very superficial level. If you have a very diverse microbiotica, then generally you're very healthy and you eat a healthy diet. However, if you eat processed foods, the number and the diversity of that microbiotica decreases significantly. And so what we need, I think, as a community is to develop more and more data sets to look at a reference point of view. And that will take some time, and people like Rob Knight argue that one should be doing that on a daily basis, right, rather than on a monthly or whatever basis. And so I think it's still a little premature, but we need companies to start harvesting this data and moving this forward from a consumer point of view. So I think the consumer world is coming, and but it has to be done, and we have to have good reference sets to be able to do that.
What area of medicine do you see it having an impact on?
I think we're going to see impacts all across the board, to be perfectly honest. There's been a lot of work in this space in GI conditions. Will it have the biggest impact? I don't know, but I do see, from my perspective, having worked in both clinical research and now working in support of a lot of pharma companies, I think we're going to see impacts, as I said, across the board, from early life and treatment of preterm infants all the way through later life and improving quality of life as we age.
I'm very biased, but I think chronic disease management, autoimmune disease, will be very impacted because we're already seeing some early signals that using food as medicine in IBD, which is Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, is becoming much more important. When we advocate for autoimmune patients to bring to themselves the best of conventional, functional, and digital medicine, the functional medicine piece is usually using food as medicine. And interestingly, today, conventionally trained GI docs are now only beginning to get nutrition training and or talk about using food as medicine for what they call functional GI disorders. So there's a lot to learn about the different diets, whether it's going to be a FODMAP diet or Terry Wahls. There's a lot of different diets out there, and there's controversy as we learn more about how the microbiome can either measure the metabolites or what's going on, and to help us personalize our nutrition for chronic disease management.
And just a common theme that's coming out here already is this whole idea of looking at populations. And the way I personally feel we're going to find some of these new diagnostics and possibly therapeutics is by looking at large cohorts of people. And we as a company have been challenged to find clinical microbiome tests, e.g. we touched on IBD and Crohn's, et cetera, where you can circumvent, i.e. go around doing a colonoscopy, and I think these are the things of the future. But in order to do that, we need to look at large cohorts of people to train data sets, to do AI, et cetera, and I think this is something I think we all agree that is on the horizon, and we'll get there.